Good day to you all, comrades and friends. This is Global Weekly News, series number 40. First, we are going to see Chinese President Xi Jinping meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin. President of People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping, went to Moscow on March 20 to 22. He met Putin, Russian President, and had lengthy bilateral discussions. Both of them agreed that the solution to the Ukraine crisis will only come through political dialogue and diplomacy. They asked the NATO countries to give up their Cold War mentality. During the visit, both countries signed various agreements related to cooperation in the economic, technological, and cultural fields. Russia and China also issued two joint statements focusing on ways to deepen their strategic relationship, calling for increased mutual cooperation on international platforms with the objective of challenging hegemonic practices and the creation of a multipolar world, among other aspects. Xi Jinping also extended an invitation to Russian President Vladimir Putin to visit China in the coming months. The joint statement on strategic partnership revolves around Chinese efforts to create a consensus around the principles of Global Civilization Initiative proposed by Xi Jinping a few weeks before. Both Russia and China agreed that they are opposed to attempts to impose a particular model of governance on the world by some countries, and both of them asserted that, different countries have different histories, different cultures, and different national conditions, and they have the right to choose their own development path. Putin, during his meeting with Xi Jinping, assured China of Russia's support on the issues of Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Xinjiang. Only 12 countries in the world, they are smaller ones, have recognized Taiwan. Taiwan is an integral part of the People's Republic of China. China is taking many steps to unite Taiwan with the mainland China. But US is making interventions unnecessarily in Taiwan. The joint statement also noted their mutual concerns about the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction recently, thanks largely to the countries of the AUKUS Treaty, A for Australia, UK for United Kingdom, and United States. AUKUS Treaty, namely Australia, the UK, and the US. That is, US is going to provide nuclear submarines to Australia. On 21st March, both Xi and Putin addressed a joint press conference where they emphasized their strong focus on multilateralism and cooperation on international forums such as the United Nations, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, BRICS, B for Brazil, R for Russia, I for India, C for China, and S for South Africa, BRICS, and G20. SCO consists of 9 members. The 9 members are Shanghai Cooperation Organization, 9 members, China, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Iran are the members. China had proposed 12-point proposal which talks about respecting sovereignty and calls for political dialogue to resolve the Ukrainian crisis. Russia has repeatedly reiterated its readiness to engage in talks regarding the war in Ukraine. However, such offers have been repeatedly shut down by Ukraine and the NATO countries. NATO countries include US, of course. The joint statement also demanded an impartial and professional investigation into the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipelines, undersea pipelines bringing natural gas from Russia to Germany. The pipelines were blown up in September 2022. US is the culprit in this regard. Second, we are going to say, comrades and friends, IPCC report on climate change. The climate crisis has affected food and water security, led to increased rates of morbidity. Morbidity means spread of diseases, morbidity, mortality, death, and displacement in the world's most vulnerable regions. On 20th March, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is in short IPCC, published the final part of its sixth assessment report called the Synthesis Report. This IPCC notes that human activities have unequivocally caused global warming. How the globe got warmed? Due to human activities only, with the global surface temperature reaching 1.1 degree centigrade above 1850 to 1900, that is pre-industrial levels in 2011 to 2020. That is compared to pre-industrial level in the industrial era, the world average temperature has gone up already by 1.1 degree centigrade. Climate change has caused substantial damages and increasingly irreversible losses in terrestrial, freshwater, cryospheric, and coastal and open ocean ecosystems. Between 330 and 360 crore people live in areas deemed highly vulnerable to climate change. Human mortality from climate events such as flood and droughts was 15 times higher in such highly vulnerable regions between 2010 and 2020. The climate crisis has also impacted food and water security, with nearly half of the world's population experiencing severe water scarcity. The biggest adverse impacts have been observed in Africa, Asia, Central and South America, least developed countries, and small islands and the Arctic Sea area. The 10% of households with the highest per capita of emissions contribute 34 to 45% of global consumption-based household greenhouse gas emissions, while the bottom 50% contribute 13 to 15% emissions only. Current global financial flows for mitigation of adverse effects of climate change, including from public and private corporate sources, are insufficient. In fact, public and private finance flows for fossil fuels, that is use of coal, constructing new thermal power plants, etc., are still greater than those for climate mitigation. Rich nations have the technology and the finance to achieve climate goals, but they don't have a liberal mind. Global North countries, they are approving more and more fossil fuel projects, and they are pushing the global South to transform to non-pollution technology. That is, they want the global South to utilize more and more solar energy and wind energy like that. While the 2022 UN Climate Conference of the Parties 27 yielded a loss and damage funding facility, it now remains to be seen how this fund will be operationalized as countries gear up for Conference of the Parties 28 in November. Another climate conference is going to be held in November of this year, which is called Conference of the Parties 28. Global warming may see 1.5 degrees centigrade higher by 2040. Immediate greenhouse gas emissions reductions in all sectors in this decade are the need of the hour. Comrades and friends, now we go to Argentina. March 24, marked 47 years since the US-backed civic military coup overthrew the left-wing government of President Isabel Martinez de Perón in Argentina, a South American country. 47 years before, US-sponsored coup took place in Argentina, which replaced the left government by a dictatorship, the bloodiest dictatorship. The coup installed the bloodiest dictatorship in the history of Argentina. More than 30,000 people, mostly belonging to the left movements, were detained, and then government said they are found missing. Actually, all of them were killed by the dictatorship. For over 3 decades, every year, on 24th March, hundreds of thousands of citizens, relatives of disappeared people, members of social movements, human rights organizations, and left-wing political parties marched to the main bazaar in Buenos Aires to commemorate the victims of the last dictatorship and demand justice for the crimes against humanity committed by the state during 1976 to 1983, more than seven and a half years. People carried a huge banner of photos of the missing persons in the rally. Though democracy is restored in Argentina in 1983, the successive democratic governments follow only neoliberal policies. Now inflation has shot up 100%. Dollar bonds with public sector companies are being sold to private sector. IMF, judiciary, and the capitalist media are making a mockery of democracy in Argentina. False allegations of corruption were charged against ex-President Cristina Fernandez. Comrades and friends, we are going to see World Water Day. The global incidence of cholera has been very low since 1990s, barring a few countries, excepting a few countries in Africa and Asia. But since 2021, 23 countries have reported cholera outbreaks, and in 2023, this year, that number has already risen to 30. So 30 countries are cholera affected countries. March 22 is observed as World Water Day every year by the United Nations to raise awareness about the lack of access to clean water and the sanitation crisis facing billions of people. Along with this crisis, we see rise of deadly yet preventable diseases like cholera. In Malawi, 1,300 people died due to cholera. Syria, Lebanon, Somalia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Kenya, Haiti, Congo. Well, these are the countries affected by cholera outbreaks. In the name of implementation of austerity policies under neoliberalism, public health is getting deteriorated. That is, it is getting from bad to worse. Climate change is also one of the reasons for the spread of cholera. One of the United Nations Millennium Goals is to ensure pure water for drinking and cooking everywhere. This goal has to be achieved. Public health should be strengthened. There shall be postings of more doctors, nurses, and health workers. Mortality rate among cholera affected patients is 1.9%. This is very high one. World community spends enormous amounts of money in the production of weapons of mass destruction, but not spends enough to ensure universal protected drinking water. Comrades and friends, we are going to Peru, another South American country. Peru's Ombudsman's office. This Ombudsman office means the officer in charge of hearing public grievances. The Peru's Ombudsman's office has declared that 67 people died due to government repression since 7th December 2022. Leftist Pedro Castillo, a rural teacher and a peasant leader, was elected as the president of Peru, a South American country. He could not carry out his progressive reforms promised during his election campaign. On 7th December 2022, Pedro Castillo lost power due to no confidence motion was passed against him in the parliament, where the rightist forces are the majority. Pedro Castillo was immediately put in jail in preventive custody. Dina Boluarte, the vice president, became the de facto president of Peru. People are on the streets since 7th December for more than 3 months, and they are fighting, they are protesting for the demands of reinstatement of Pedro Castillo as the president, resignation of Dina Boluarte, dissolution of the parliament, which is having the lowest approval rate, only 10% approval, 90% disapproval rate for the parliament. And they want elections, they want constitution of a new constituent assembly and framing a new constitution. On 11th January in Cusco city, police shot at a young man, Rosalino Florence, with 36 lead pellets, taking part in anti-government protest. After 2 months of treatment in the hospital, Florence died on 21st March. The mother of Florence said that they do not want any compensation for the death of her son. She wants justice for her son. She wants the policeman responsible for murder of her son shall be punished. Comrades, lastly we are going to see Antony Blinken's African visit. Antony Blinken, Foreign Secretary of United States, visited 2 African countries on March 14 to 17. He first went to Addis Ababa of Ethiopia on 15th March and had talks with the Ethiopian leaders regarding peace accord with the Tigray rebel liberation groups active in the northern region. On 16th March, Antony Blinken visited Nigeria and had talks with the Nigerian president and Nigerian foreign minister. Nigeria in Africa has plenty of uranium reserves, a strategic mineral used in atomic energy. Still, in the Global Human Development Index, Nigeria's position is 191 out of 199 countries. UNICEF, United Nations Children's Education Fund, asked the United States to extend aid of $45 crore to children of Nigeria, but United States offered aid of only $15 crore. Millennium Challenge Corporation, a multinational agro-based company that has entered Benin, a neighboring country of Nigeria. Their small farmers are being evicted and agriculture is now being privatized in Benin. In order to counter China and its Belt and Road Initiative, United States is trying to create its own domination on many African countries. Well, this is all this week's Global Weekly News. See you next week, comrade. Lal Salam.